Okay, this is the first day I'm trying this. Time now is 6:40 and I woke up at 6:25, even though my target is to wake up at 5 a.m. So why am I doing this? I'm trying to get up earlier, try to get up and do something useful or learn some skills with the first hour of my life every day, and hopefully I can be in somewhere I want to be in a year's time, doing things that are quite different to what I'm doing now. So yeah, I hope to be doing this maybe an hour every day, around there. So let's see where it hits me. So for today, the first hour, I'm gonna be doing some reading aloud, reading and pronouncing English better. Yeah, so let's do this. So today I'm gonna read this book called If I Could Just Tell You One Thing. It's a book I got from the library. So let's start. I'm just gonna prepare to write down some words which I'm not good at pronouncing, so I could check on them later. Okay, so the author is Richard Reed. If I could just tell you one thing: encounters with remarkable people and their most valuable advice. It's written to chicken and sausage. Introduction. When I was a child, my father often took me fell walking. We spent misty days climbing the gentle peaks of the Yorkshire Dales and Lakeland Crags. Each trip a new route, a different summit to climb, always a bar of chocolate at the top. I don't remember him teaching me per se, but I inherited from him the rituals of the great outdoors. Close the gate to keep the sheep in. Walk at the edge of the field to protect the crops. Stand aside for those coming uphill. My favorite tradition was placing a stone on the cairns, the small pile of rocks that walkers create to help mark the way. A simple, easy practice, both altruistic and self-preserving in its aim. To help others find the path, knowing that the next time the lost fell walker could be you. We benefited from these cairns outside many times, when the clouds came in and the path was unclear. And even on bright days, those cairns provided welcome reassurance, while more distant ones hinted at different paths still to explore. Off the mountains, I've come to appreciate that sometimes a few words of advice can act as cornerstones in life. A wise sentence or two that gets you back on course when you're lost in a fog or stuck in boggy terrain. Knowledge from a fellow traveller who can point out the best views of the safest route. On at least 3 occasions, a single piece of advice has changed my life. And over the years, I've gained a deep appreciation of learning from people both wiser and more experienced than myself. So 10 years ago, I made a simple promise to myself. Whenever I met someone remarkable, I'll ask them for their best piece of advice. The result is this book. If I Could Tell You Just One Thing. Walks the full spectrum of human experiences and emotions, from those of Simon Cowell at one end to those of Lily Abbott and Auschwitz survivor at the other. In between, You'll find the considered wisdom of presidents and pop stars, entrepreneurs and artists, celebrities and survivors. From people who have made it and from others who have endured incredible hardships. From those who have climbed as high as you can go in life and from people who have witnessed the worst of what humans can do to one another. Good advice is like a nutrient-rich broth made from boiling down the bones of life and being fed so much of it, sourced from such remarkable people, has enriched my life and understanding of my fellow Homo sapiens immeasurably. If chosen well, a few words can capture and disseminate the main insights gained from someone's hard years of experience, thereby allowing us to benefit from them. This is certainly the aim of each of the encounters in the book. Every person is someone I've met, either through running my own business or from subsequent varied career working in the government, charities, the arts and the media. Some people featured are friends. Some are people who generously agreed to be interviewed, and a few are unsuspecting folk I ambushed when fate put us in the same room at a party, a conference, or in one case, at a urinal. When I ask people for their best piece of advice, I urge them to really think about what they consider to be most important. I put the same exact question to everyone. Given all that you have experienced, given all that you now know, and given all that you have learned, if you could pass on only one piece of advice, what would it be? There is something about asking people to stand behind just one nugget of wisdom that gets them to reflect harder, dig deeper, and be more candid in their response. And it has led to some extraordinary answers. The material is diverse and wide-ranging and covers everything from achieving success to dealing with failure, from finding love to having better sex, from getting the best out of people to surviving abuse. There should be something in this collection that speaks to everyone. Most people, when asked for advice, are happy to give it. This desire to help is a manifestation of the better part of human nature. It costs nothing, can be shared infinitely, and will last indefinitely. And I hope that this is first of several books, for there are countless remarkable people of a fraction, on the planet, and this first collection only captures the insights of a fraction of them. There are endless stories to be told and wisdom to be captured. Over time, I hope to help create a global commons of advice, a shared pool of wisdom that everyone can both contribute to and gain from. After all, as a species, we are much more alike than we are different. And while everyone's path through life is unique, we can all benefit from the knowledge of more experienced walkers ahead, who can tell us of the most beautiful things to see and guide us to the safer places to cross the river. Richard Reed, June 2016. So we start with the first story here. In the bubble with President Clinton. His staffers call it being in the bubble, the experience of traveling in President Clinton's entourage. You ride in the president's plane, drive in his armed convoy, sit at his table. You don't so much as move, you glide. There's no queuing for passport control, no checking in, no checking out. It all just happens behind the scenes. You go wherever and whenever Mr. President goes. I got to ride in the bubble on a Clinton Foundation trip around Africa. It was a grueling schedule. 8 African countries in 8 days. Every day the same. Wake up in a new country, get in the convoy, drive hours down dusty tracks and potholes path into the middle of nowhere, visit project, an HIV testing clinic, a malaria treatment facility, a women's empowerment group, then back in the jeeps and on to the next project, at least 4 times a day. At each visit, the president was an unstoppable force, straight out the 4x4, hugged the local community nurses, talked with the dignitaries, danced with the local tribal performers, posed for the photos, do the speech, present the gong, stop and chat with the locals, play with the kids, notice the quiet one at the back, made a point of talking to them, give them a hug, coax out that smile. At every event. In the searing heat and dust all day for 8 days straight. I've not seen anything like it. I don't think anyone has. He reflected for a while when I asked my question about advice for life, in a rare moment between stops. But the president's answer made sense of what we were seeing. I've come to believe that one of the most important things is to see people. The person who opens the door for you, the person who pours your coffee. Acknowledge them, show them respect. The traditional greeting of the Zulu people of South Africa is Sawubona. It means I see you. I try and do that. Never has a person practiced more than what they preach. The craziest beat back at the hotel, after 12 hours in the field, tired, dusty, depleted. When asked, more mortars will be up in our rooms, ordering room service and hiding. President Clinton is down in the dining room, talking to the waiters, joking with the other guests, making an American couple's honeymoon, accepting an invitation to join a family's table, sitting with mom, dad, and 2 saucer-eyed children. He doesn't stop. He knows what it means to people to meet a president, or more specifically, to meet him. And everyone is made welcome. Everyone is made to feel important. Everyone is seen. Quote, one of the most important things is to see people. The person who opens the door for you, the person who pours your coffee. Acknowledge them. Show them respect. Unquote. Bill Clinton. Next, Marina Abramovich is present. I'm in downtown New York looking for soup. Specifically, chicken noodle soup with prawns. Or, I'm now wondering, did she say without prawns? I arranged this lunchtime meeting with Marina Abramovich, the Serbian-born, internationally revered performance artist, a month ago, and we agreed I will bring her favorite soup. I just can't remember what it is. To avoid a potential faux pas, I get both. So when I arrive in the Greenwich studio where Marina works, the first order of business is to decide who gets which soup. Personal preferences are to be discarded. She insists on tossing a coin. Fate shall decide. The fact that I worry she may be upset about which soup she gets both shows my hopeless Britishness and ignores the fact that this is an artist who has flagellated, cut and burned her naked body for her art in public on many occasions. She's probably not the type to get worried about soup. In fact, she's a woman who fits no type at all. She's gloriously, gorgeously unique and manages simultaneously to be sincere, saucy. She likes telling dirty Serbian jokes. Free living, disciplined, reckless and loving, and is about the most interesting and alive human being I've ever met. In her performance art over the years, she has pushed herself to the point where she has lost consciousness, gained scars, spilled blood, and risked her life. One of her earlier works, Freedom Zero, involved her lying on a table while people were given access to 72 different items: scissors, a feather, a scalpel, honey, a whip, etc., and told to use them on her as they saw fit. By the end, she's been stripped naked, had her neck cut, thorns pressed into her stomach, and a gun put to her head. She has recently hit 70 and is more in demand than ever before. MOMA's 2010's retrospective of her work, The Artist is Present, supercharged her international profile. As part of this exhibition, she sat immobile and silent in a chair for over 700 hours, while thousands of visitors queued, some overnight, to sit opposite her. Marina would hold eye contact with each person, fully present in the moment, reacting to them only if they cried, by her crying too. She explains that being present, gaining consciousness, is a big theme in her work. She sees cultivating inner awareness as the best way to disentangle ourselves from the artificial structures of society, so we don't feel disempowered or helpless. Quote, with many people, there is a sense the world is falling apart, and it creates a feeling of just giving up. And that inertia is the real danger to society. People have to realize we can create change by changing ourselves. Unquote. This heightened consciousness can only come if we stop thinking and achieve a state of mental emptiness. Only then can we receive what Marina calls liquid knowledge, the knowledge that is universal and belongs to everyone. The mission to help people attain it explains her more recent work, in which she invites her audience to count grains of rice or water droplets, to open the same door over and over again, to create distractions to stop distraction, and rediscover the present so they can then rediscover themselves. Given the originality and uncompromising nature of her work, the risks she has taken and the sacrifices she has made, it is unsurprising that her main piece of advice is a rallying cry to commit deeply to whatever it is you feel that you must do. Today, 100% is not enough. Give 100%, and then go over this border into what is more that you can do. You have to take the unknown journey to where nobody has ever been, because that is how civilization moves forward. 100% is not enough. 150% is just good enough. I hugely respect the advice, but I reply that most people may not be prepared to put themselves in harm's way and in real pain for their passions as she has done. But for this, too, she has advice. Yes, the pain can be terrible, she replies. But if you say to yourself, so what? So pain, what can you do? And if you accept pain and are no longer afraid of it, you'll cross the gate into the non-pain state. Advice? I choose to accept rather than put to the test. Quote, today, 100% is not enough. Give 100% and then go over this border into what is more that you can do. You have to take the unknown journey to nobody has ever been, because that is how civilization moves forwards. 100% is not enough. 150% is just good enough. Unquote. Marina Abramovich. Alright, let me get a drink. Next, Terry White, A Patient Man. I've just heard what must be one of the most understated sentences a human being could utter. I'm having lunch with Terry White in his local cathedral town of Bury St. Edmunds. He's telling me about his experience of being held hostage for 5 years in Lebanon in the late 1980s. After having gone there as the Church of England's envoy to negotiate the release of existing prisoners. He describes his 4 years of solitary confinement in a tiny windowless cell chained to a wall. He recounts the beatings and mock executions he suffered. He explains how he had to put on a blindfold if a guard came into the cell, so he didn't see a human face for 4 years, and how they refused him a pen, paper and books, and any communication with the outside world, including his family. He reflects back on it all and says, yes, it was a bit isolating. Terry White is the human manifestation of what it means to be humble, to serve, and to sacrifice. He put himself in harm's way in the hope that he could help others. And 25 years later, he is still working tirelessly to help people who have had family members taken hostage, which says it all. The craziest thing is that he claims he was mainly doing it for himself. I tell him, I know the concept that no charitable gesture is selfless, but this is pushing it. He insists, saying his career has been about achieving reconciliations, and that following that path has helped him reconcile the different sides of his own self. He's also quick to point out that many people have to endure far more than he did. He talks of people held captive in their own body, when disease or accident have taken away their ability to move, and he knows only too well of the many hostages who don't get to come home at all. Both Terry's words and actions advocate the profound importance of having empathy. It is a fundamental tenet of his approach to life. He recounts meeting with the British mother of a man who was beheaded by terrorists in Iraq, and even in her terrible grief said that she knew her suffering was no different to that of a mother in Iraq who has lost her son through warfare or insurgency. In that simple statement, she summed up with tremendous courage something we should never forget. We are all members of the same human family. We all have fears and hopes and aspirations. We all have our vulnerabilities, so we should be very careful before we attribute negative stereotypes to other people. Terry's empathy helped him stick to the 3 rules he set himself when he realized that he's been taken hostage. No regrets, no self-pity, and no sentimentality. He also stuck to his principle of non-violence, a philosophy tested to the extreme when one day he found a gun in the toilet left accidentally by his guard. Terry said, I think you've forgotten something, and handed it back to him. So, how does one cope with 4 years of entirely unjust and unrelenting solitary confinement? I did my best to structure each day. I'll allocate a period of time to doing my exercises, then I will write for an hour or 2 in my head, then do mental arithmetic. I've spent a lot of time dreaming up poetry too. And then it will be time for some more exercises and so on. I tell him it seems it would be impossibly hard to fill all those lonely hours. In another world-class example of being understated, Terry just nods and responds. You know, the whole experience wouldn't have been so bad if they had Just let me have some books. He claims there have been unintended benefits of the ordeal. It gave him the confidence to leave his salaried job afterwards and live a freer life. So one related piece of wisdom he's keen to pass on is that every disaster or seeming disaster in life can usually be turned around and something creative can emerge from it. That is not to say such suffering is not difficult and damn hard, but it doesn't need to be totally destructive. It's the way you approach it and the way you approach life after. So, given that, what is his best advice for how to approach life? It's the same lesson I learned in that cell. What you have to do is live for the day. You have to say, now is life, this very moment. It's not tomorrow. It's not yesterday. It's now. So you have to live it as fully as you can. Invest in every day. After speaking to Terry, I will. Next. Absolutely Lumley. I'm at an awards do, and the god of seating plans has smiled benevolently upon me. I'm sat next to Joanna Lumley, one of UK's most loved actresses, and one of the country's most prolific and effective activists. To talk to, she's as one would expect, warm, inclusive, crush-inducing, but with this soft-edged charms come inspiring, hard-edged principles, a sense of civic duty, of justice, of doing the right thing. She's a heady combination of warm heart and iron will, which explains that while her TV and film work would be the career to be proud of in itself, it is her commitments and contributions off screen that are the most remarkable. Take the new Garden Bridge across the Thames in London, an idea soon to become reality, providing the most beautiful addition to the city this century. Everyone in London knows about it, and everybody loves it, just like Joanna Lumley. But what is less known is that it was entirely her idea, a concept she dreamt up and then agitated to make happen, bending the will of those who naively told her, at first, it couldn't be done. Or look at the issue of Nepalese Gurkha veterans who served in the British Armed Forces before 1997, who have been historically denied the right to settle in the UK after fighting for the country. A morally bankrupt decision and one that needed reversing. It was an unfashionable and unfabulous fight, but one that Joanna Lumley took on unreservedly, using her charm, celebrity, conviction, and sheer dogged resilience until the victory was achieved and those rights installed. In short, she is no ordinary woman. And when I gave a short speech later at the awards do and said I've been sitting next to Joanna Lumley, the audience erupted into applause. Everyone in the room loves her. There was therefore a synchronicity to the advice she gave me. The secret, darling, is to love everyone you meet. From the moment you meet them, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Start from a position that they are lovely and that you will love them. Most people will respond to that and be lovely and love you back, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you can then achieve the most wonderful things. Then she leaned forward and whispered in my ear, "But get rid of any of the bastards that let you down." And I said, as I said, warm heart, iron will. Quote, "The secret, darling, is to love everyone you meet. From the moment you meet them, give everyone the benefit of the doubt." Unquote. Joanna Lumley. Next. The eloquent Mr. Fry. The previous time I spoke with Stephen Fry, he was a robot. The setting was a tech conference, and he attended via an iPad attached to a cyborg on wheels, controlled remotely from a joystick and camera in his bedroom. This time, we are chatting in person over afternoon tea, sipping from bone china cups in a cozy members club in London. The different interactions capture two sides of a fascinating man. On the one hand, a self-confessed techno geek with an interest in the latest gadgets, and on the other, a graceful British gentleman with a love of classic traditions and culture. As you would imagine, meeting his real rather than virtual self is the richer of the two encounters. In person, you experience his warmth and thoughtfulness, and a wonderful sense of complicity from the stories and confessions he weaves into the conversation. He's an easy man to spend time with. Modestly, he says, advice is something he's wary of giving, but he does have a few thoughts he'll be happy to share. I'm expecting something literary or spiritual, but surprisingly, his first thought is a broadsiding of life coaching. One piece of advice I want to give is avoid all life coach lessons. They are snake oil without exception, and the art of stating the so fucking obvious it makes your nose bleed. I was not, it has to be said, expecting that. When I query why, he expands further. One reason is the obsession with goal setting. Because if I meet my goals, what then? Is that it? Is my life over? I met my goal. Do I just set another one? What's the meaning of the first goal if the second one has to be set? Or if I don't meet it, am I a failure? As he talks, I subtly turn over the page in the notebook, list my goals for the day. Unsurprisingly, Stephen does not have a life coach, but he does have Noah Cowell and a quotation from him, which Stephen has above his desk. Guides his approach to life. Work is more fun than fun. If you can make that true of your work, you will have a wonderful life. I know how lucky I am to have found that, and how unlucky many are to not have found that. To have not found that, rather. People talk about work-life balance, but the idea of balancing one against the other makes no sense. My life isn't against my life. Sorry, my work isn't against my life. Work is my life. Of course, just loving your work is not enough. If you want to get anywhere, you have to be prepared to work really hard at it too. Maybe everyone I know who is successful works hard, really hard. Maybe that should be my advice. Work your bloody bollocks off. But the strongest recommendation Stephen has is to avoid the trap of thinking it's somehow easier for other people. It is never right to look at someone successful and think, that person's got money, that person's got looks, that person's good at cricket, so it's easier for them. Chances are, 90% of the time you're wrong. But even if it's somehow true, thinking that is a very self-destructive thing. It leads only to resentment, which is corrosive and destroys everything but itself. Stephen believes it's better to try and put yourself in their shoes. Imagine what life is like for them. It's the secret of art, and it's the secret of life. The more time you spend imagining what it's like to be someone else, the more you develop empathy for others, the easier it is to know yourself and to be yourself, which is the best thing for us all to be. Quote, work your bloody bollocks off, unquote, Stephen Fry. Next, the erotic intelligence of Esther Perel. This is perhaps the ultimate sign of the times. I am at an international tech conference featuring literally thousands of founders of cutting-edge internet companies. But the talk everyone wants to hear is Esther Perel's, the world's most renowned relationship therapist and advisor-in-chief on handling intimacy in the modern age. Esther is ready to speak, but the organizers won't let her. We are in the main auditorium and there are 500 more people than there are seats. Founders are sat on the steps, stood at the back, crammed into the hallways. However, the fire regulations won't allow for such numbers, so an announcement is made. Until the extra 500 people leave, Esther can't start. But no one is prepared to miss out, and a standoff ensues. It's resolved only by Esther's promising to repeat the talk later for the people who can't stay. In fact, such is the demand that over the weekend, she ends up giving 4 talks. In comparison, the founder of Uber gives just 1. I catch up with Esther later, in her current hometown of New York. I asked her why she thinks so many people were keen to get her advice on sex and relationships. She explains, we have gone, at this point, into a digitalized way of life, a generation that has been clicking away forever in environments that are sensorially deprived, and it creates a corrective need for human contact, for face-to-face relationships. But after the digital world, we can often struggle with the imperfect nature of real people. The fact that people immersed in the online world sometimes needs help with handling real life is not something she judges or condemns, but is something she occasionally worries about. There can be something beautiful about the immediacy of connection that the digital world allows, but on the other hand, dating apps where we swipe left or right can leave people feeling disposable, commodified even, and that commodification is hurtful and degrading. Esther first received international acclaim for her insights into relationship when she published a book, Mating in Captivity, an exploration of erotic intelligence and how to keep sex alive in long-term relationships. Esther brought into the open the underlying contradictions in coupling up, the fact that we crave both freedom and security, the predictability love needs, yet the novelty desire longs for. It gave some straight-talking solutions and has been credited with saving countless relationships ever since. Beyond the actual content of her work, the most captivating, fascinating thing is why Esther was drawn to studying people and relationships in the first place. My interest in people, in humanity, in the way people live, whether they create a life of meaning or not, it goes back to my 2 parents who are Holocaust survivors. They both spent 4 years plus in concentration camps and came out with nothing. All they had was themselves, their sense of decency, and their relationship. That is what endured. And my dad said that was all that mattered. And her father's wisdom echoes in the advice Esther gives, which is among the best and most profound I've heard. Quote, the quality of your life ultimately depends on the quality of your relationships, not on your achievements, not on how smart you are, not on how rich you are, but on the quality of your relationships, which are basically a reflection of your sense of decency your ability to think of others, your generosity. Ultimately, at the end of your life, if people commend you, they will say, what a wonderful human being you were. And when they talk about the human being that you were, it won't be the fact that you had a big bank account. It really won't. It will be about how you treated the people around you and how you made them feel. Unquote. The quality of your life ultimately depends on the quality of relationships, not on the achievements, not on how smart you are, not on how rich you are, but on the quality of your relationships, which are basically a reflection of your sense of decency, your ability to think of others, your generosity. Esther Perel. Inside Heston Blumenthal. I should check out how to pronounce that name. It's not going well. The score is 10-1, match point to Heston Blumenthal. The Michelin 3-star chef and owner of the best restaurant in the world, as voted for by the best chefs in the world, turns out to also be a friend at table tennis. In my defense, before the match started, he powed me with strange colored cocktails and confessed to having table tennis lessons up to 3 times a week. At least the humiliation is swift. His final serve goes the way we both know it's going to, and I retire to the bench and the solace of my next cocktail. The experience of going to see Heston at home is the British middle class equivalent of visiting Hunter S. Thompson. Liquor is drunk, cigars are smoked, deep chats are had, and while no guns get fired, he does have his table tennis serving machine, a device that shoots out 100 balls a minute. We turn it on and it causes a hailstorm of the little blighters pinging off every wall and surface in his table tennis dedicated basement. I've known Heston for a while now. His brain is like that ping pong machine, capable of throwing out 100 ideas a minute. His curiosity, creativity, and appetite for learning are greater than in anyone I know. The first time we met was at a company meeting where I watched him get 300 people to each eat an apple holding their noses to demonstrate how flavor is what we smell, not what we taste. He's a man who lives and literally breathes sensory experiences. And to illustrate the point, we are now back in his kitchen and he's teaching me how to smoke a cigar so you can appreciate all the different flavors. It involves repeatedly pulling a lit cigar from his lips with a pronounced smoked sound. The trick apparently is to keep the smoke out of your mouth. Don't let it get past your teeth. Food doesn't just play a central role in Heston's life. Probably haven't read a lot in a long time. Food doesn't just play a central role in Heston's life. He sees it as a way of explaining all of human existence. Food has shaped not just what we do and who we are, but also what we are. We evolved because of eating and the things around eating. When we discovered fire, we moved away from eating only raw starches. Our low digestion started to shrink, our neck and therefore our lungs lengthened, which allowed us over time to start to vocalize. And that ability to communicate meant we could start to spread ideas, build up our imaginations, and from that, everything became possible. Connecting food to human imagination is his signature dish. He has brought more original ideas into the kitchen than anyone else. He first got major attention in the culinary world when his restaurant, The Fat Duck, put crab ice cream on the menu. A dish that now seems almost ordinary in the food fantasy world he's seen created of edible pups, food you can listen to, and chocolates that float in mid-air. He says his interest in the world of food went from 0 to 100 in a lunchtime. As a teenager, his dad got a bonus from work, and to celebrate, he took the family to a Michelin 3-star restaurant in France. The combination of not just the food and the taste, but the sensory overload of the smell of lavender from the restaurant garden, the feel of linen on the table, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the sounds of crickets and clinking glasses. It felt like I've gone down this rabbit hole into Wonderland, and I found something that fascinated me, and I knew right then I wanted to be a chef. His imagination and curiosity were kick-started by studying ice cream. He found a recipe from 1870 for Parmesan ice cream. I thought, that's bizarre. And then I started questioning, why was it bizarre? Who says ice cream has to be sweet? And once I started questioning that, I began questioning everything. I found a thread and just kept pulling. It means that while your average chef is checking out other restaurants and menus for inspiration, Heston will be investigating the worlds of biology, chemistry, history, and geography. He has teamed up with professors in macrobiotics, psychologists, and molecular scientists. As an example of how deep he can go in these lines of inquiry, this year, the Royal Society of Chemists is publishing a list of 175 of the most influential scientists and chemists on the planet, alive or dead. Einstein's on it, so is Heston. He leads me over to a coat of arms he created, now framed on the kitchen wall. He says it took him 7 years to design, as he wanted to capture everything he stood for. There's a twig of lavender to effect smell, and the trip to that first restaurant. A pair of hands to reflect the craft of his work. A Tudor rose for the historical element of his cooking. A magnifying glass for the importance of investigation and inquiry. And an apple to reflect Newton's discovery and non-linear thinking. Most telling of all is his motto, just 2 words, inscribed in italic font, which explain his approach and his creativity, and what he puts forward as his best piece of advice for life. Question everything. And to me he expands. The opposite of question everything is question nothing. And if you don't question things, there's no knowledge, no learning, no creativity, no freedom of choice, no imagination. So I always ask why. And why not? I ask question, 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 question. And then I listen. And that's how I discover something new. He then concludes by asking me a question. It's the one I'm most dreading. Fancy another game of table tennis? Quote, question everything. If you don't question things, there's no learning, there's no knowledge, no creativity, no freedom of choice, no imagination. Unquote. Heston Blumenthal. Next, the 2 voices of Annie Lennox. Annie Lennox has 2 voices. The first is the one that has sold over 80 million albums, winning her 5 Grammys, an Academy Award, and more Brit Awards than any other female artist. Her second voice is the one she lends to women's rights and the issue of HIV/AIDS in Africa, and it's this campaigning voice that takes center stage these days. Annie remembers the moment when her singing voice changed pitch from artistry to activism. It was after taking part in a concert to launch 46664, Nelson Mandela's HIV/AIDS Foundation in South Africa, a country with the highest rate of HIV infection in the world. She witnessed Mandela describe the HIV pandemic as a silent genocide carrying the face of women. He explained that 1 in 3 pregnant women were HIV positive in South Africa, and AIDS was, and still is, a leading cause of death for women of reproductive age globally. Then, on a visit to a township hospital, she saw the impact of AIDS for herself. In clinics, rape crisis centers, orphanages, and people's homes. It was a dark epiphany for Annie. From then on, she shaped her life around responding to the tragedy. The result has been over a decade of tireless work on tackling the issue. Work that has, according to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, contributed significantly to turning the pandemic around in our country. In 2007, she founded a campaign called Sing to raise global awareness and prompt action, helping to ensure that HIV-positive women and children have access to the treatment and care they need. Annie has traveled across the globe giving fundraising performances, presentations, speeches and interviews on radio, television, and in the printed press, at conferences, rallies, and in government buildings, speaking truth to power at every given opportunity. She also became the founder of The Circle, an organization which aims to inspire and connect women in order to harness their skills, creativity, and influence, and to transform the challenges and injustices faced by the most disempowered girls and women in the world. Those dusty plains of sub-Saharan Africa are a long way from the working class tenement block in Aberdeen where she was raised. Coming from a poor but musical family, she studied the piano and flute at school, which led her to be offered a place at the Royal Academy of Music in London at the age of 17. It became my passport out of there. Tough years followed, however. I had very little money and didn't really know anyone. I lived in a variety of different bedsitters, doing whatever I could to make ends meet. But even though my chances seemed bleak, I didn't want to go back to Scotland and feel as if I failed. One constant through it all was singing. I would sing and sing and sing. Walking down the street, in the shower, all the time, just by myself. And by the time 3 years at the Royal Academy had come to an end, I knew I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. So I started to write songs on an old Victorian harmonium. I've been writing poems since I was 12, and I had a lot to say. But for all the hard work, practice, and passion, one factor for success was still missing: serendipity. That came thanks to Camden Market, where Annie sold second-hand clothes, sharing a store with a friend. It was there that she got to know a guy selling records which told her, "You should meet my mate, Dave." According to Annie, there was a creative connection with Dave Stewart from the beginning, and within a few years, they were dominating the charts on both sides of the Atlantic as Eurythmics. Her life story is of a woman following her passions, wherever they may take her, from the tenements of Aberdeen to the townships of Africa, via the Grammys in America, and her advice fits that story perfectly. There will be aha moments in life when the light might go on, when you think to yourself, I must do that, whatever it is. It's not because someone says you should do it, but it's because you feel absolutely compelled to, and there would be something wrong with the world if you didn't. If you find that light, acknowledge it. Find other people who share that passion. Cultivate it. Find that deeper purpose in your life. As voices go, it's a good one to listen to. Next, On Holiday with Simon Cowell. I'm sat deep in the stalls of the London Palladium Theatre, watching 4 glamorously dressed people on stage argue with each other. Above them hangs a huge backlit Union Jack resplendent with the words Britain Got Talent, and beneath it sits the man who has most definitively proved that assertion to be true, Simon Cowell. After the judges finish play fighting and filming raps for the day, I'm brought backstage to meet the main man. He sat in the center of the room, surrounded by a bustle of black cat assistants, cameramen, and producers, the calm eye in the middle of his own media storm. I know his reputation for cutting to the chase, to put it politely. I also know from his media director that he's 12 hours into a 20-hour day, so I am a little apprehensive, expecting a terse, short conversation. But the exact opposite ensues, and embarrassingly for a 43-year-old man, straight man such as myself, over the hour we spent talking, I fall hopelessly and completely in love with Simon Cowell. It starts with Simon sitting me down and making sure I'm comfortable. He then offers me a cup of his homemade fresh ginger tea, but it turns out to be so fiery, I start to cough and my eyes water uncontrollably. Simon is concerned and makes sure I'm okay. Then, once he's happy I've recovered, spends the next 10 minutes inquiring about me, my business, my story. He speaks softly, probes gently, listens intently. He invests more time just asking about me than the time we've been allocated to talk. Eventually, he allows me to move the topic of the conversation from me to him. His manner is so warm and kind and charming, and his voice so soothing. I totally relax. A lovely feeling washes over me, like being on a sunny holiday. He uses my name a lot and drops in the odd compliment. I get the impression he really likes me. I start to think we might become good friends. Maybe we'll even go on holiday together. I catch myself. This is ridiculous. I'm a grown man behaving like a teenager. I need to concentrate. I push my man crush and daydreams to one side and tune back into what he's saying. He's certainly someone worth listening to. A rich and fertile source of practical wisdom and insight, anecdotes and stories. I say, his team strike me as exceptional in their commitment and professionalism, and he explains how he learned to get the best from people. Well, Richard, my dad told me there's an invisible sign on everyone's head which says, make me feel important. Remember that and you'll be fine. He's charmingly, self-depreciatingly candid about where his ideas come from, which makes me like him even more. So Richard, I'm in my kitchen one night, cooking dinner and watching some boring program, saying to myself, I'd rather watch a dancing dog than this. And then a few seconds later, I think, actually, I really would rather be watching a dancing dog than this. And that's where the idea for BGT came from. I can see his assistants hovering, but I don't want my time in the sun to end. So I play for time and keep on asking questions. Given his dominance in the music industry, what's his advice for aspiring artists trying to make it? More than anything else, you have got to have a great song. Do small gigs. Listen to the crowd's reaction. Find out what works. And how does one cope with all the inevitable rejections? Listen to the feedback. You may learn from it. But if the people saying no are more stupid than you, don't get discouraged. What if someone finds themselves auditioning or pitching to Simon Cowell? If you get a yes, then shut up. There are times I've said yes, and the artist starts with, I knew it, we are going to do amazing things together. And the more they talk about, I'm thinking. And the more they talk, the more I'm thinking, I'm really going off you. The better ones just say, good, call my lawyer, and leave. That confidence has me reaching for my lawyer within 10 seconds. I would keep going all night if I could, but I know that sadly, all holidays come to an end. And with local versions of his shows running in more than 180 countries, Simon has a long night ahead of him, with many questions to be answered, many auditions to watch, many people to make feel important. So I finished by asking for his number one piece of advice. My best advice is listen. Listen rather than talk. I was never bright in school, but I was a very good listener, and I still am. I have a better life because of it. When I meet people, I'm curious about their story, about how they did what they did. Along the way, you meet people smarter than you, and they teach you what you don't already know. So I listen to them, take away my little tidbits, and off I go. And with that, a final wave and a lots of love, he's whisked off by his ever-faithful team. Unfortunately, my holiday romance with the talented Mr. Cowell is over. I wonder if he'll write, quote, if you get a yes, then shut up. There are times I've said yes, and the artist starts with, I knew it, we are going to do amazing things together. And the more they talk, the more I'm thinking, I'm really going off you, unquote. Simon Cowell. Right, I think it's about an hour. I'm at page 46 of the book. So why I decided to do the first hour of reading is because I found that we don't really read aloud. My English isn't that great. So I thought this is a good thing to start practicing, trying to speak aloud, trying to improve my English. I think today there's been a lot of mistakes. I hope as the first day this means everything will get better over time. And eventually, hopefully I build some skills to allow me to go to the next step in life, and in a year's time, if I manage to keep it up, I hope I'm in somewhere different, doing things I really would enjoy more, hopefully, with the skills I've built through this extra hour every day in the morning. Yep. So see you guys tomorrow. See myself tomorrow rather. Yeah.